Okay guys, so in today's video we're going to be doing an update on Char the Bearded Dragon. Now if you follow any of my other social media pages, so Instagram and Facebook, the links to those are in the description by the way, you will know that some things have been going on with Char behind the scenes, and I haven't really talked about it properly until now because I wanted to know exactly what was going on with him before I shared the information. But anyway, without further ado, let's get right into it. Now you may remember that from the last video I made where I talked a bit about Char, I mentioned how he wasn't really basking at all and that had been going on for some time and I was a bit worried about him. Well, not too long after that video actually, he did suddenly disappear. I came home from school one day and I was just looking about his enclosure to see where he was, and I just could not find him anywhere. There were loads of burrows all over the place and he just had seemingly disappeared. But after an age of looking, I actually managed to find him stuffed behind some cork bark right at the back of his enclosure. Now, given that Char, this is sort of his first proper winter that we're coming into, I hadn't expected him to brew mate, which is where they sort of go into a deep sleep, sort of like hibernation throughout the course of the winter. I hadn't expected him to do that because usually in the first year it's recommended to let them get some size on throughout the second year before they're reliant on the fat reserves alone to go through the entire winter. But given this behaviour, I'd sort of presumed that Char would be brumating, and I had actually wanted to get a faecal sample done before he went into brumation if he was going to do it, because if you do that then you can get them treated for any internal parasites they might have before they go asleep, because that sleeping period can really exacerbate any issues they might have. So getting them treated beforehand really is worth it, but I wasn't too worried that I hadn't got it done because he was a pretty healthy lizard in my opinion anyway beforehand, so I was just going to let him go asleep and every week throughout the winter just check on his weight and give him a drink, and I thought it would be all okay. So after a week of him being asleep, I went to check up on him and I gave him his bath and he was acting as I thought he would, sort of sleepy but really slow, but still quite alert even though he was just sort of moving a bit more slowly than usual. But then I actually went to weigh him and he'd lost 11 grams. And for anybody who keeps reptiles, 11 grams is a pretty big value unless you're talking an enormous lizard, but for a bearded dragon that seemed like quite a lot, and that really made me start to worry at that point. However, the thing that was really weird was that when I put him back in his cage, he actually started running about and just being his normal self straight away, and he was actually basking more so than he had been doing before he'd been asleep for the week. So I was completely confused as to what on earth was going on with him, and I got into contact with Pete Hawkins, who you may or may not know. He used to do some articles in Practical Reptile Keeping, and he's also got a couple of networks on Facebook. He's also got a YouTube channel that I'll leave the link to down in the description, but he's a really knowledgeable person, so I decided to get in contact with him and we decided what we should do next. Given that Char had lost the weight and it seemed like he was sort of going into brumation, we agreed that it would definitely be the best idea to get a faecal sample done. So whilst he was still awake, I made sure he had something to eat, and I took 3 samples of faeces and sent them off to Pal's vet lab, and to get his faeces checked out. And that was all successful, and I was just waiting for the results when Char sort of started going to sleep again, but it was okay because I got the sample sent off, so all I had to do was wait for his results and I was hoping that he'd be fine. When the results came back, it turned out that Char did have a high level of yeasts in his gut, as well as a couple of scanty nematode ova and some coccidia. Now, the scanty nematode ova or the yeasts, they sort of neither here nor there, but the coccidia can be a really bad disease in bearded dragons. They're usually present in the guts anyway, but a spike in them can cause illness, so me and Pete agreed that it would definitely be the best course of action just to get Char checked out by a proper exotic vet before I let him go to sleep for the winter. And hence, last Monday the 5th of November, I took Char to the vet. Now, I've only ever been to an exotic vet once, and that was with Red the corn snake years and years ago now. And the one that I'd went to in the past was actually a different one that has since closed down. So I wasn't really sure what I was going to get when I went, because honestly, exotic vets are notoriously bad because the training for them is just not specific enough, to be perfectly honest, at the minute. So I was sort of fingers crossed that it would be good, and all of that fingers crossing did pay off, because when I went, the vet really was very good indeed. Now, what she did was we had a different discussions about Char's husbandry, how he'd been acting. I showed the data records that I've got of him. I have got a video about recording data because it's something that I am passionate about when it comes to animals, and really more people should do it, but that's beside the point. After looking at that, we also had a listen to Char's heartbeat, and the vet basically said that Char was really, really healthy and that I was taking great care of him, which I was really happy to hear. But because of the coccidia, even though he was showing no symptoms apparently to having any illnesses or setbacks from that, she did give him a just one-time medicine while we were there, and that was him good to go. After that, I brought Char home, and I've given him a week now just to get through that medicine, just get it out his system. Although as soon as I put him back in the viv, he dug a nice hole and he has slept all week straight. He's not come out once. I mean, I've took him out and I've weighed him again, and his weight has been completely constant since he's been, like, for the past couple of weeks. So I'm really happy about that. And he does seem his usual self, only he's sleepy. So now that he's got through that medicine, it should be, you know, working in his system and whatever. I'm going to cool him down over the next week, leave him asleep for a month, and then warm him up again. Usually a bearded dragon you'd let to sleep for sort of 3 months, but the vet sort of agreed with the idea that he's maybe a bit small for that prolonged period asleep. So she recommended only giving him a month of sleep, and we'll see how that goes. But anyway, it seems like it should be a happy ending, and Char seems to be in good health. I'm not worried about him anymore. So yeah. Anyway guys, the long and short of this video is that I basically, as a newcomer to bearded dragons, have been on a bit of a learning curve, and I know I've not got into too much detail in this video, but basically the idea I want to portray to you is that I've been keeping reptiles for like almost 5 years now, and I'm keeping a beginner species here, a bearded dragon. This isn't something crazy like a blue tree monitor or something, but still it managed to completely throw me off, and I didn't really know what was happening. And in the end, it turned out that basically nothing was happening at all. It was all pretty much normal. We just got some precautionary medicine for him. So basically, I want to just put it out there for newcomers to the hobby that whilst you might be worrying about things and things seem crazy when you start out, once you learn stuff, it is actually not really that stressful at all. It's just you've got to have experienced it firsthand before you know what you're doing. In the future, I hope to be able to make a full guide to brumation for all sorts of different species. Obviously, Char's going to brumate any year, whatever what I do, because his instinct to do so is so strong, and that is common to bearded dragons. But in the future, I do have the intention of brumating the other species I have that I can, so that I can put that information out there for you guys on how you can brumate your animals successfully, and just sort of to remove the stigma from it, because it happens in the wild, and so it's my sort of belief that we ought to let it happen in captivity. But anyway, I do hope that you guys could take something from this video and that you enjoyed it. Now, next week and in the coming weeks, we do have something really, really exciting coming up, and it does involve a new vivarium, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But I will see you in that next video. Bye, guys.